Welcome to the Soul Touched by Dogs podcast, the show for dog lovers who see dogs not as toys or tools, but wise souls worth our respect and care. I'm Anke Herman, and I'm your host. I talk to awesome humans, people who do great work for dogs and their people. So come and join us for today's conversation. Hello and welcome, Nancy. I'm super excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. So we just had a little discussion about makeup of all things that we both not interested in. So that was quite funny. So let people know, where in this lovely world are you based? And, as always, what's your business with dogs?
Sure. So I live in California. I moved here in 2020. I'd been in California before, but then I spent a decade in North Carolina, and now I'm back, coincident with the birth of my oldest grandchild. I live in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. Uh, Dogs. I like to say that I left the womb in love with animals. And by the age of 10, I knew that I wanted to be a veterinarian. And lo and behold, that's what I became. I went to veterinary school at Cornell and then came to California, to University of California, Davis, to do residency training and became a specialist in small animal veterinary medicine. And I practiced for 35 years. I'm retired from clinical practice, although I still have a license so I can take care of my friends and loved ones' dogs and cats. And I practiced, had a very lovely, fulfilling career. And in 2008, I wrote my first book. And I can tell you about why I wrote it if you like, but I wrote my first book, and then that led to more writing, blogging for many, many years. I continue to blog weekly. And since then, I wrote another book, and I am releasing a third book this year.
Very exciting. So now, obviously, I can't, like, you've made it easy. I can't I can't help take the bite. So what made you write? Like, what inspired? Because I mean,
Sure,
I've written a book. There's a lot of work in it, so you don't do that unless you really
sure,
feel you have something to say. What inspired the first one, and how
sure.
did that story evolve?
In approximately 2006, as you know, women of a certain age have mammograms, routine screening mammograms. And something showed up on the mammogram, which led to other procedures and a biopsy. And the biopsy revealed some atypical cells. And it was recommended that I have what's called a lumpectomy, a surgical removal of that area. And I happened to have a client who was a pathologist, meaning looking at tissue samples under the microscope. And his specialty was breast tissue. And so I contacted him and he said, yeah, bring the slides over, bring the mammogram over, we'll look. And I went to his office, and he's the person who wrote the textbook on breast pathology. Like, he is the guy. And and he said, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. This is why people get concerned about these cells, but nothing to worry about. And so I left the office so relieved and thinking, wow, it's my medical advocacy skills that allowed me to avert a needless surgery. And how does the average person do that? I mean, I have all this medical wisdom and knowledge. I know how to do it, but how does the average Joe know how to do it? And so I thought, I wonder if I could teach people how to do this. And I felt it would be presumptuous for me to write a book pertaining to human medicine. So I wrote a book about dogs called Speaking for Spot: Be the Advocate Your Dog Needs to Live a Happy, Healthy, Longer Life. And originally I thought it would just be lists of questions to ask the doctor, but you're a veterinarian, but it became so much more. Became a bestseller, and many people told me that yes, it applied to their dogs, but they took the same advice with them when they went to the doctor. So that was the evolution of Speaking for Spot, which has kind of become my brand name. I'm publishing my next book under Speaking for Spot Press.
Oh, wow. So I mean that I love that so much because literally Soul Touched by Dogs was born because of that. I ended
Oh,
up like, okay, found a puppy in the street. Now what, right? So, and there
yes,
was always that sense that I knew I didn't know anything. So I started looking and learning, and a lot of the things that I was advised by vets, by trainers, by, didn't make sense, you know?
yes.
And there was always that, you can't just take at face value what you're being told. So that
Hmm.
whole journey of knowing I don't know anything, so I'm gonna believe anything anybody tells me to, okay, I
Dangerous.
need to educate myself so that I can make an informed decision and I can kind of weigh up one opinion against another and sort of, be an advocate for my dog,
Right.
because the dog will fall through the cracks between all the different
Yeah.
opinions and different approaches. And so the advocacy of it is really what sparked this whole project. So I
In
love
my
that you
book,
come at this from the
yes,
from the medical angle.
correct. And in my book, I convey that you, the person who takes care of that dog, you're actually the team captain of your dog's health care.
Mm.
And you have veterinarians, you have trainers, you have a lot of people uh, that you rely on for advice, but you're the team captain and you get to make the tough decisions.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I guess it's no different than having kids in a sense, right? It's also like, yeah, you don't go to school for that, and you
Right.
have to make the decisions and choose who to trust and who you don't. So I guess it's not that different, but I somehow didn't quite see that coming when I found that little puppy in the street. I
Yes.
didn't realize there was going to be so much conflicting advice and so
Yeah.
much, outdated advice that was still kind of like regurgitated as if nothing else had been discovered since.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what inspired the other books after that? So did you
So,
get bitten by the writing bug then?
yeah, I definitely have the writing bug, as evidenced by how much I've blogged once a week for years. Um, the second book is called Your Dog's Best Health: A Dozen Reasonable Things to Expect from Your Vet. Um,
Mm,
People sometimes have difficulty expressing their needs and opinions with their veterinarian they put on a pedestal, and that's not what I encourage anyone to do. I encourage what we call relationship centered care, where it's a team approach, not just sitting and being told what to do, but discussions of options and what makes the most sense for your dog, who you know better than anyone else, and what makes sense for you, what you can afford, your lifestyle, all of that. Um, and so many people didn't really know what's reasonable to expect from their vet. And it's reasonable to expect a lot of things that people often don't get. And I
like what?
encourage,
Can you give a couple of examples?
sure, um, discussion of all options and the cost for all options. Uh, there may be a best approach, but if it's not affordable, it's not the best approach. Yes. And that your veterinarian encourages you to be part of the team, not just being told what to do. Um, Things like that. Oh, for example, many people leave their pets in the hospital overnight, not knowing that there's no one there with the dog overnight. And if your dog
Yeah.
is sick enough to be in a hospital overnight, there should be someone providing care. So 24-hour care is something that is reasonable to expect from your vet. And if they don't provide 24-hour care, they should refer you to a facility that does. So various
Mm.
things.
That's fascinating. It reminds me of a conversation with a friend I had, like where that was literally the case, where the dog was there overnight and they came in the morning and she had smashed the glass of that cage
Ugh.
thing and probably eaten some of it in that, in her this stressed state, yeah, nobody
Yeah.
was there, so it is like, it's kind
Yes.
of, you wouldn't even think that, like you would
Right.
not imagine that they just go and close the
People
door and come
assume.
back to exactly. Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. And I think it's also that asking for a second opinion. And I only know, like, I've not had a dog before I lived in Spain, so I only know the way it goes here, and I definitely often found it quite frustrating, so to ask for, hey, what are the options, and they will all just tell you one.
Right.
Like,
That's not okay.
and
That's
I'm
not
like, well,
reasonable.
don't you, because then I will go and I will do I'm the Google vet, right? I will research everything I can, to sort of see. And I mean, example was the first girl I had, and so it was like, okay, I don't want puppies. Like, all I knew, she was a puppy still, and I'm like, all I know is, like, I don't want to have a whole bunch of puppies. So what are the options, right? And literally I called 5 different vets, and every single one said, oh, well, we just need to take everything out, like, before the first heat. And I'm like, from what I've read, that's not kind of the only option. And I remember friends in Germany, people told me that there are other different ways and different approaches. And,
And
and I'm
different
thinking,
timing.
I expected them to say, well, here are the options. Here's the one I recommend. Here's why.
Right.
That's
Right.
what I was hoping for, and none of them actually gave that. They all
Exactly.
said the same thing. This is the only way. And then I have a trust problem. If I think
Sure.
they don't know, then I don't really trust them anymore.
Right. In my book, Speaking for Spot, there's a whole chapter on this. It's titled A Second Opinion is Always Okay. And
Hmm.
that's true for us as well with our own medical care. And people get hung up on requesting a second opinion from their veterinarian. They're worried that they are going to hurt their veterinarian's feelings. And
Hmm.
what I say is, what's more important, your dog's health or your veterinarian's feelings? And to me, that's a no-brainer.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess then you're almost like, you're also between, if you have vet number one says this and vet number two says something the opposite, and then you don't know which one's right, right?
Then you go to vet number three, or you consult with a specialist
Hmm.
who's going to be most up to date, most current on what's involved. There's 4 different ways to spay a dog. I recently blogged about all those different
Hmm.
ways. And actually, Europe is more progressive about this than veterinarians in the United States. And
Hmm.
so it's very common in Europe, for example, to simply remove the ovaries and leave the uterus in place. In the United States, it's very rare that veterinarians do that. They remove the uterus and the ovaries.
Yeah.
And removing the uterus isn't at all necessary, and it involves more trauma, more time, more surgical time. So, yeah, and there's also ovary sparing spay. So the dog is still producing hormones, but she can't conceive.
Hmm.
Um, and
See, I'd
there's
heard of
all
all of this from my friend in Germany, because
right
there
and
they have all these. There was even like a pill or something, like there's
right,
all these different options, and then you come here and they go, oh no, you just kind of have to, like, before
right.
they can even, like, walk, basically.
Well, there's also a lot of data about the timing of spaying in
Hmm.
particular breeds. And I have all that research on a website called spayneuteradvice.com. And for and it's for certain breeds, neutering before a year to a year and a half of age increases the incidence of orthopedic issues and increases the incidence of certain types of cancers. And it's very breed specific. So
Hmm.
veterinarians should be taking all of that into account when advising on the methodology for neutering. With male dogs, I questioned if a dog really needs to be neutered, if the owner is responsible and can prevent unintentional litters. Um, yeah, and the timing of the neutering is also important. So there's a lot to consider. It's not just neuter between 4 and 6 months of age. That's all you need to know.
Hmm.
There's a lot more to consider these days.
Yeah, no, and
And I do find, by the way, that veterinarians, at least in the United States, it usually takes them 10 to 20 years to begin to adopt the newest research. So, for example, when we learned that dogs don't need to be vaccinated once a year for everything, it took veterinarians in the United States about 20 years to really embrace that.
well, they haven't started here. They
No,
haven't
no,
started yet. Like this looks like, it looks to
no.
me like what's going on here is like 20, 30 years behind of everybody else, you know. And yeah, it's I guess it also evolves. I mean, you know, I've literally heard like there was a Spanish vet, and she was very young actually, so she just sort of finished, and she was in this program, and she was talking to this other person, and they go, oh well, I've just finished, like this is the last, like I've just finished my studies, I will never open a book again, like I'm done, you know. And I'm
Uh,
like, all right, like you've just disqualified yourself in my book, because I guess, you know,
exactly.
like if there's any field where ongoing learning would have to be, you know,
Mm,
it has to be anything to do with medicine, right? You don't want to kind of stay
sure.
stuck at what you learned when you finished uni, you know.
Yes.
So, and somebody
Yes.
who comes in with that attitude is, I mean, yeah, that learning thing, I'm done with that. I thought that was a little
Exactly.
scary. Hmm.
Um, and then is it okay for me to talk about my third book?
Oh, absolutely. I was going to ask you anyway. So go for it.
So, as a human being, as a veterinarian, probably my biggest soapbox issue, it has to do with anything having to do with animal welfare is a soapbox issue for me, but in particular, puppy mills. And
Oh,
I believe that puppy mills exist in Spain. I know they exist in the UK. Um, and puppy mills are basically large commercial breeding facilities where profit is prioritized over the humane treatment of the animals and meeting both the physical and psychological needs of the animals. Many of the animals in puppy mills spend their entire lives in small cages, being bred cycle after cycle after cycle. And when their useful breeding life is over, they're eliminated. They're in a variety of ways, many of which are unsavory. So I have grown weary of adults not getting the job done in terms of eliminating puppy mills. And the way that one eliminates puppy mills is to diminish the demand for puppies coming from puppy mills. So, are you familiar with Greta Thunberg? I
yeah.
think that's her. Yes. And so she's a kid who's all about climate change. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I need to teach kids about puppy mills. And I thought I would write a nonfiction book because that's what I've
Mm.
written. And I wrote a number of iterations of it. And I just thought, man, if I were a kid, I would never read this. And so I ended up writing a fiction book that's an adventure story about a 12-year-old girl that has a chance encounter with a pregnant runaway golden retriever from a puppy mill.
Oh,
And one thing leads to another. She and her best friend discovered the puppy mill, and now it's a matter of rescuing all of those dogs. And it's going to be released later this year. It's called A Dog Named 647. And I'm really excited about it because, and I did have several beta readers, 11 middle grade beta readers, and most of them had never heard about a puppy mill, never heard of puppy mills. So I'm really excited to get this in the hands of kids at a time when their awareness of the world around them is really budding.
yeah.
And
Oh God, I love that. I love that so much, because that's, it's
thank you.
literally, it's that next generation that, you know, where when kids are taught something different, then the whole thing can
Yes,
change in a fundamental way. Yeah. I mean, that
yes,
feels like this is sort of mandatory reading in, you know,
yes,
schools and libraries and things like that,
yes,
for
I hope
sure.
so. And I'm
Wow.
creating a website sort of organization called Kids United for Animal Welfare. And so puppy mills will be one of the topics, but there's so many other topics they can become aware of: factory farming of animals, what happens to all the male baby chicks that are born who aren't going to be able to lay eggs. There's just so many topics. And I would love for kids to become fluent in animal welfare issues.
Yeah, and they, and a lot of them do love, like kids. When you see, I just love like sort of 4 or 5 year olds, when they still the way they approach an animal with that sense of like wonder, and that like
Yeah.
they're open to things, and yeah, and I think it's giving them a chance to learn about these things as yeah, I think that's making a huge difference, and it's sort of starting at the right place, right?
I hope
Mm.
so. I hope so,
Mm.
because appealing to adults hasn't worked. And there's legislation, at least in the United States. Okay, so now the cages are large enough that a dog can lay down. Whoop-de-doo. There's nothing about how the dogs need social engagement with humans, with other dogs. They need blankets. They need enrichment toys. They need to be fed more than once a day. They need clean water. They need to be in a climate controlled environment so it doesn't get too hot or too cold. Come on. And
So,
having been in puppy mills and looked into the eyes of those dogs,
oh,
oh, I just can't not work on this.
mm, I don't, I like I admire you for being able to go in there, because it's almost like it's got to be heartbreaking. you know I always think like a dog looks you straight into the soul anyway, and seeing
Oh
them
my
like this,
goodness.
it's just horrific. I mean, this is a very public invitation. Like, once your book is out, I would love to have you back to
Thank you.
to
Thank
talk about
you.
that and really promote it
Great.
when it's
I would
out.
love to come back. Mhm.
I would totally love to showcase that in a
Thank you.
for another round. So in the
I appreciate
meantime, where could people, get your books, find out more about you, connect with you?
So one easy way to connect with me is via my Substack, and I know you write on Substack as well. And the Substack website is my last name, KN for Nancy, .substack.com. So that's a way to find me there. I'm working on a new website, author website, which will be drnancyk.com. And I'm working on the kids' website, Animals United for Animal Welfare. My old website, which still exists, is speakingforspot.com. So
Such a
those
cool
are,
domain.
yes,
Don't lose that.
that's a variety of ways to catch up with me. And I always respond to questions, always.
Oh, it's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And I'm like really keen on getting the books now, because I think they really feel like mandatory reading for any dog guardian who wants to be that advocate. And I think
Thank you.
that's what we're here for. So thank you so much for what
You're
you do.
welcome. You're welcome. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Same, likewise.
And by the way, I love reading your Substacks
Oh, thank
posts.
you. Thank you.
They're great. They're awesome.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so other dog lovers can find the show. If you haven't already, head over to soultouchedbydogs.com and sign up for weekly doggy cuteness, tips, recommendations, and personal stories to warm your dog-loving heart. And if you know a awesome human you think I should interview, I'd love an introduction. Email me at Anke, that's ANKE, @soultouchedbydogs.com.